Good afternoon, everybody, and I'll start again properly. Welcome to our latest series of webinars. We will investigate that technical fault to see what went wrong there, but I'm sure it's fine. So the aim of these webinars is to, of course, provide as much information as we can do about how we can use the products in the Microsoft 365 stack in a police environment. So we are recording this webinar. It will be added to our library, and regardless whichever stage of your adoption journey you're on, we hope these webinars add value, whether you're already past one of the 12 forces who've achieved the full rollout status, or you're approaching that status now, or right at the beginning. We want these to add value. Today we're talking about Yammer. Now, lots of people have heard of Yammer, have tried it out, but perhaps not built it into an integrated approach. Yammer is about effectively a private social networking platform. And we all know staying connected with each other at the moment has never been so as important or as challenging, considering we can't get face to face. So Yammer is a private social media platform for social networking. And that is part of any effective communications or engagement approach in an organisation. And it was originally designed as an internal comms platform, but it's actually built into a world of its own in many ways. Yammer's not a silver bullet, and it's not mandatory, but it's one of those things that we think you should really consider as part of your wider internal comms and engagement strategy, both for some of the formal stuff, but also for the informal. And it can be allowed to be part of the communications moving forward. Now, Alex is going to share her screen with us, and we'll go through a slide that's in the communications pack of the Enabling Centre. And you can see that we've built Yammer into our wider approach. It's a way of getting signposting content to people. It's a self-service communications and engagement platform. Think of it as something like that we can use it as. And it can be a way that we can get SharePoint news across to other people, conversations, or even get people to join live events like this one, and hopefully they work. So I'm going to hand over to Alex, who will go through a few bits of detail and show you the products in action, and then we'll come back and Mike from L&D will add some content from his side as well. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, David. I just thought it was really important to cover this slide to begin with, to see where Yammer fits in with the other products in Office 365. Now, within Microsoft, we normally call Yammer our outer loop, and that's because we often have smaller projects, often quick messages in Teams, direct comms via email, whereas Yammer is a lot more self-service and can act across the whole organisation. So think of it as a self-service place to go for information, for asking questions, and for reviewing group comms. Now, just a couple of ideas of how Yammer can be used within your organisation. So first of all, it's brilliant for comms and feedback. It's a great place to go to gather feedback and initiatives and ideas on a certain thing. It could be such as a new canteen. What would you like to see in there? It's a great open forum for posting ideas and having people comment on that. Another really key use case is connecting to your seniors and making sure they're engaged across your organisation. So I've seen many organisations do a senior leadership Q&A. You could use it as a chief's Q&A, ask the chief a question. And we've had great feedback on how perhaps a new recruit at the very start of their career can connect with someone who's at the height of their career and have that engagement and feel like they're part of a really connected organisation. From a HR perspective, we just mentioned new recruits. It's great to have a onboarding forum for anyone who's new to the organisations. It can be things such as, how do I find my badge? Where do I go to sort out car parking, or to pick up a car? Those questions that might be quite difficult to find on internal intranet pages, and it's much easier to go to Yammer and ask a colleague, or someone's probably asked it before if they've been a new recruit. Also really key from an education and a learning perspective. It gives you that open forum to share best practice on how you perhaps run lessons, allows you to set up sites on special interests and subject matter experts. I use that really heavily internally in Microsoft. We have Yammer pages with our subject matter experts from all the different products, and I'll show you how I use that quite heavily. From an IT perspective too, also back when I worked with county councils before police, they use this really heavily as a Q&A and support desk function for IT. So instead of submitting a ticket when you had maybe a user error question, if you popped it in an IT Yammer space, it would allow your community to answer the question for you rather than waiting from a reply from IT, who might be quite overloaded with questions and work. And finally, just from a social aspect, so those things that aren't kind of business as usual, it might be things such as a women's network, could be a cycling club, could be a charity initiative that you set up and running. It's a great place to have them that's a little bit separate from your business as usual Teams team, for example. So I'm just going to swap now and show you how Yammer actually looks and functions. So bear with me just while I swap my screen. There we go. I'm actually just going to show you my whole screen because I'm going to dive between a few places. So first of all, how does Yammer work? So you'll notice when I log into Yammer, you'll have a home feed, and this will pull through all the different questions, posts, polls from all the different communities you are a member of. And you can see down the side here, these are all my different communities. So communities are self-service. We most commonly see an all company. Community is standard, which will have everyone across your org. But then after that, it will be up to you to decide what communities get created. And you can think of this in two ways. I have organisations that will have quite an open Yammer policy. Anyone can create a community, and you'll just join the ones that you're interested in. Similarly, you can lock it down, so just a few individuals can create a community, and you can put a request process in place. So I've got my home feed that pulls everything into it. I can then dive into my subjects of interest on this left-hand side. You also have a search bar at the top in Yammer. So you notice here we're searching this community, but I can search across the whole of Yammer for a certain post, and it will show me all the different posts. It will look for the words, and it will also search the comments as well. So there's a great search engine for finding the communities that you're interested in. And you can see here, you can filter down between communities and conversations. When I'm actually in a community, there's a few key places. You can brand this community, so you can make sure you've got a cover photo. You can make sure you've got a profile photo updated. And at the top right hand side here, you can always see who's a member of your community. Underneath members, you've got a space for information. So this is where you might want to set the context of what you want to post in here. Always really important to remember that it is linked to your login and your email address. So when you post on Yammer, it's not anonymous. So anything work suitable, even though it is a bit less formal than, say, sending an email or doing a Teams post, your name will still be connected to it. So do remember that anything you'd say in a canteen would reflect the same if you posted it as a post on Yammer. So often we see here some how you might want to use the team, maybe some etiquette guidance, and underneath here you can also pin key links and files as well. If I look at my main forum feed, you can see if I scroll down, I'll see all the different posts that have been posted, and there's a few different options of what you can post. First of all, you've got a question option. So this is where you can ask a question to the community. So it might be, what is your opinion? Oops. On the new canteen plans. We can add people to this post. So maybe we want to add the person who's been working on the canteen plans. So Nesta. We can also add some topics in here. So these can be searchable. So let's put canteen, put facilities in here. So if anyone is looking in the search engine, it will bring it up. and you can use hashtags in here as well as an easy search engine. And we can also add images, pictures, documents, and GIFs as well. So just to make it a little bit more light-hearted. Here we go. Let's add this one in. So when we're ready, we can come and select Ask. We can see here our post has been submitted below, and anyone can come and comment with their thoughts below the initial question. Now you'll notice I actually went below this post. So what you can do is come to the top 3 dots here and pin it so it stays at the top. So for those really important posts, you might want to pin them. So you can see here, because we've already just pinned one, it might give you a warning to say you've got to only have one pinned at the time. But this is a brand new feature to the refreshed version of Yammer that you wouldn't have had available to you before. You can also see we can do likes. We can share the post as well. You can copy the link to send to someone to say, comment on this post. I want to know your thoughts or support my thoughts here. And you can see it's very much like a social network tool, as Dave was saying. It's a lot like an internal Facebook. At the top here, you do have notifications. So if anyone does post a new post in the communities that you're watching, you'll be able to see it at the top here. And there is also an admin settings area where you can choose the theme, you can edit some settings, and you also might want to set up some things such as watching for keywords and phrases. So I know an insurance group I used to work with, they popped all kind of swear words in there to watch out for. So if anyone wasn't using correct language, they could just pick them up on it and say, you can't really post that in Yammer. Just to show you creating a community, so if we do have access to create a community, what does it look like? Very simple. We can pop the name of the community in and simply create it from there. Bear with me a second, it's just logged me out. Here we go. So I'm going to create a community for cycling enthusiasts. I can add members if I want to as well. And there is 2 types of access. So public access means that anyone in Yammer can search for your community. They can just add themselves and view the conversations or the posts. Or private access means only if you've got to be invited to that team. Must admit, now that Teams has come along, this option on Yammer is kind of quite rarely used, and public access and being that very open forum is the most common option. So when we're happy, we can click create. And you can see here, we can just quite quickly upload a photo, update our covers, add info and pinned to set up our community. So we did just cover one aspect, which was questions. Just want to show you the other options. You can do a praise. So this is really commonly used in Microsoft. We can shout out when there's been really good work. Again, we can add people in that we want to shout out. There we go. And when we click praise, you'll notice it just previews it differently to a question. It's purple and it's got the thumbs up in there. So again, this is really great for getting engagement across your org. So making sure new hires who might not normally get on the Chiefs or the AC's radar can be narrowed down for doing some really good work, and people can celebrate with them. Also really key for when we're all working at home, we don't necessarily bump into each other in the office and give verbal praise like we used to. And the final option is a poll. So this is where we can ask a question and get a quick poll answer. So again, if we just go back to the new canteen, I can ask a question as to we go. When we're happy, we can click ask. What you'll get previewed is a little poll on screen. You can choose your answer, select vote, and in real time, you'll be able to see the results of the poll coming through. So it is for that open collaboration and communication primarily. Now you can do a lot more advanced things with Yammer as well. You can link in events. So I am actually on a Yammer event myself today. I'll show you how that looks. And you can also link into, I shared my whole screen, didn't I? Do apologise. You can also link into SharePoint as well. So just to show you how that looks, if I just dive to a SharePoint page, we can see here it's quite a basic one. We've got some documents bringing in, but as one of our sections, I brought in a link to our Yammer community, so I can see any posts coming in there. And you can pin that per community or just have your home feed. So if you were doing a group all on L&D, you might want to link your learning and development team in here. Also available with communities is that you can pin these to the side of teams. So if you come to the 3 dots, search for Yammer or communities, you can see it pinned there. Let me just find it. Oh, it might not be quite in the product just yet, but we've got this internally on our system, so that'll be coming very shortly for you guys. And last thing, I did just want to give you a look of how we're using Yammer. So I don't know if you can see here, this is how it looks when we've got a Yammer live event. We can see anyone posting questions or pinning key things at the side. So someone's pinned if we need translation options for our event. And it just gives you a great way of having that discussion, having that feedback. You're not having to worry about a live event chat, people not using it correctly. You've got everything in the open here for questions and sharing key posts. So very, very good for these open events, and we are on this all day within my team. And then just to finish off with, I just wanted to show you how it works on a massive scale. So this is my internal Microsoft Yammer page. We can see here my org company has 270,000 people, so very large. And you can see even though we've got this many people in Yammer, I can still pick my communities. So Microsoft Teams is one of my favorites. You can see here I've put a heart next to it to show it's my favorite, but we've got everything in there from a CEO connection where we can put questions to our CEO Satya. And once a quarter, he will actually do a town hall and he'll look at these questions as a basis of answering them. So a great idea with your senior execs and chiefs. Also, as I mentioned, subject topics and finding subject matter experts. This could be anything from languages. Mine often comes in the form of products. So because our Microsoft product team for Stream sit in the US, I am always on here asking questions about features and questions you'll often send us and how things work. So again, it's a really great way for getting hold of those subject matter experts. And quite often you might see a question about that you're looking for already being asked and answered. So I hope that was okay as a quick overview of Yammer. Great for those wide, less informal comms. And just remember, it is self-service. You can choose and favourite the topics that you are most interested in. I'll hand back to David now, who's going to talk around how he sees Yammer.
Some massive potential in terms of Yammer for forces. So, you know, Teams is where we do the business, but potentially Yammer is where we can talk about how we deliver the business and those other things. So, you know, the challenge of getting together all PCSOs in the country, in a county, in a force. You know, you could have a PCSO group, you could have a problem solving group where people discuss how they're doing problem solving. You know, your football clubs, your diversity groups, anything like that, where you want to bring people who are in different teams together in a way they can engage in an informal way to talk about the different issues that they want to talk about in policing. You know, the potential to have an L&D team who learn together, then a little group who form together to support each other, people preparing for sergeants and inspectors exams, a little group where they can share their experience and knowledge. All these sorts of groups that you can set up that don't fit within our structures but want to get together and exchange views and exchange information. Some real potential in there. We know, and put my old hat on from back work I did around the social media over the last few years, colleagues want to engage with each other on an informal basis. They want to share views, and our leaders do as well. There's a number of chief officers who are having regular conversations on Twitter. So there's lots of potential in Yammer as part of our communications approach. Imagine the chief officers want to get people to attend a live event, the chief's roadshows. You'd put that out as a SharePoint news story, an email, but then a couple of colleagues might share it into a Yammer group to get more and more people to come along and to have that sort of conversation. So there's lots of potential. We have put a few things together to help with this, and a number of forces have already gone some way down the line, Cumbria in particular, and Cumbria helpfully shared us their governance document, which we've built into the Enabling Centre comms pack. So there's a whole piece on governance for Yammer built into the comms deck that you can access, and there it is on screen. So more than happy for you to go and visit that. Cumbria shared it so we can use it for forces, and talks about who should have the ownership of creating groups, how it should be governed, and all those sort of things. So it's available for you in the Enabling Centre with all the content that you'd ever need on that. Mike, do you want to come in and talk about elements in the L&D space?
Thanks, David. And thanks, Alex, again for a great session on Yammer. I think there's some fantastic opportunities from a learning point of view, bearing in mind that a lot of the learning actually takes place outside of the classroom and actually on the job, whether you be a brand new recruit, you've left your training school and you're now there working on division, and the whole cohort has been scattered to 4 different corners of the area, or even like first and second line managers who are new to management, which can be a very lonely place. Once you've gone through your initial program, you're then out there managing and running teams, operational and back office. And what Yammer can do is help that communication and that conversation go with regards sharing ideas, sharing how the learning, which has seemed very theoretical in the classroom, is actually transferred into the workplace. You can have that opportunity to say, I've tried this technique and it's worked for me, or I'm having a problem trying to get my head around this particular aspect of the law. And you have your cohorts, you have your colleagues and friends who you've learnt with together to share ideas and best practice. And I think it just adds another element into that whole area around blended learning and the opportunity to really take forward how you continue your development, continue your learning from the classroom or from a virtual classroom into the workplace. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Mike. So, Alex, a couple of the questions have probably come in there. So, Heather, I don't know if you can read out some of the key questions for us.
Yeah, sure. So the first question from Emily, can you rearrange the groups down the left-hand side so all company is always at the top group?
Great question. Unfortunately, you can't rearrange them, but by favoriting them, so clicking the heart next to them, that will push them to the top. So it would just be a bit of an internal comms message to say favorite the all company, so it comes to the top.
Fab. And Jane wants to know, can a Yammer community be accessed by people external to the organisation? Only if you want them to, obviously, like guests in Teams.
Great question, Jane. So you used to be able to do that if you might have used Yammer in the past. However, with using the new UK data centre and EU data centre for Yammer, this does prevent the external access being enabled. So unfortunately, it will just be for your internal community Yammer. And we suggest if you do want that external guest piece to perhaps think about using Teams for that. So that is a little bit of a change to how old Yammer you might have used in the past works.
Tanya says, thanks for the prompt for next week. Could you clarify, is it linked to PSD and information management processes?
Thanks for that. No, it's slightly different. We've adjusted the content so it can be a bit more open. It's going to be about how you can protect data and share information. We're going to work up a workshop on the PSD one where we can go into a lot more detail than we can on a webinar.
Yeah, and Daniel's saying, can create a community be open to all users, bearing in mind that the creation of M365 groups has to be governed by a process?
Great question, Daniel. So I know technically in the product you can have that. It might be worthwhile us just checking that with the NEP design and getting back to you. But let's double check that one for you, I think.
Certainly the best practices we've had from forces who've already used it is it's better to have some form of governance because you end up with duplication of groups if you're not careful. So you'd end up with several groups all talking about the same thing, and what you do need is a little bit of curation to make sure you avoid that opportunity to make the groups as valuable as they can be as we move things through. Just one question before I ask it for some more is, what sort of information should we share and not share on Yammer?
Really great question, David. So we were talking about this yesterday, weren't we? So we really recommend you sharing the process, but not necessarily the details. So you might talk around some best practice, how you went about perhaps a new investigation or perhaps an inquiry, but not sharing any of the specific details linking to it. It's that kind of process you went through, things that you did, but not going into any secure, sensitive details. That always works the best within Yammer.
Heather, is there any other questions?
Yeah, Brett's saying originally Yammer was not to be used as part of O365 based on the Deloitte paper. Has this now changed?
It has, yes. We are recommending the use of Yammer as a way of actually improving and getting more value out of the wider use on the platform. It's included in the MOU, it's included in the deals, and what we're finding is that, you know, getting the balance right between Teams, Yammer, email, and that product mix is really valuable. And forces who are using it are finding it a really good way of thinning out some of the emails, thinning out some of the Teams traffic. It becomes part of that mix. So yes, we do recommend it using it. It's probably one of those things where it works better than in a force than it would in terms of our project. Certainly, we're only 40 people on the program, so we don't really need Yammer, but it's going to be invaluable. And Mike and I are looking at ways we can use Yammer to support comms and L&D colleagues in a more informal way, a little bit like, I know there's a number of colleagues from the comms teams on the chat today, how we use the Facebook group, which is a very effective way of being able to share ideas and collaborate across barriers. We're looking at similar sort of ways that we can do that across forces now. So absolutely we're doing that. Gemma, I see your question on FOI. Yes, is the answer. Anything that we disclose could be subject to an FOI. So we, you know, if it's owned communication, then it's subject to FOI. And I think Heather is the one more in there.
Yeah, I think we've skipped over one, which was Emily said, do you recommend all open groups or allow closed groups?
I think the beauty of Yammer is to have open groups so people can find their topics and join them. So I would say what David said, you might want to do some governance to stop group duplication, but then have groups as open as possible. You want as few closed groups really, only if it's really necessary to have them closed.
Yeah, and it is well covered in the governance papers that we've put into the Enabling Centre, so I do recommend having a look at that, and we're happy to facilitate conversations between forces to share the best practice, and one of Heather's role is to help us to do that so we don't put too much burden on the same forces.
And we've got a couple more questions that have come in. So Vanessa saying, can Yammer be integrated into intranet if not migrated to using SharePoint for intranet, i.e. C feeds on homepage?
I think it would depend what your intranet is based on, Vanessa. If it's not on SharePoint Online, if you can link in URLs, you could potentially link in a Yammer feed, but it would depend what basis you're using for your intranet. SharePoint Online works best as it's got a little hero module that links directly into Yammer. And
it just takes a few seconds to actually put the web part in. Yeah, to have it visible, and you can curate it really well, and you could easily have lots of different Yammer pages appearing on different SharePoint pages.
Okay, and then what issues have other forces had when implementing Yammer, and how best can you avoid them? And then second question, what analytics can be collected through Yammer?
Cool. So great question. The nice thing about Yammer is that it is web page based. So there's not as many kind of prerequisites technically wise, such as, for example, deploying a desktop app. Something that is really useful for the adoption of Yammer is if you can get Yammer as an app on workforce devices, mobile devices. I'd say that's probably your biggest technical thing to overcome, as that's where I find people really get great benefit is when they're accessing Yammer on the commute, so when they've got 5 minutes at lunch to check up with what's happening. But generally in the technical implementation, it's fairly easy as it's just a web-based tool.
And in terms of issues forces have had, I really go to the governance document in the Enabling Centre. That's been based on forces who have adopted it early. And the key thing is to have some form of governance, but not over the top, because we're already governed by standards around code of conduct, police standards, all those sort of things. We don't need to reproduce them again for Yammer. You know, it's the same sort of behaviours that we expect to happen on there. I think we've got one more question, have we, Heather? And then we'll better be getting close to the close.
Yeah, just one final question. Is it a chargeable Teams add-on?
It is not. It comes in the police MOU. I might have let the cat out of the bag that we do have a new feature coming that links your Yammer communities to Teams. So not an extra charge. It's just another app in the Office 365 suite.
So again, it is about getting the value out of the products we've got access to. So again, I do recommend having a look at it and moving it forward if you can do. We've certainly got it on our mobile devices as well. That's working really well. There is one more question coming about the difference between US and EU data centers.
So that's just where the residency of your data used to be. So it was originally in the US. We did have a new data center created for Yammer last year, I believe, for the EU. So if you have used Yammer in the past, it might be that you want to set up a new instance of Yammer and have it on the EU data center instead.
And again, I'd always say that we should never be sharing personal data across about the people we're dealing with on Yammer. Teams is better for that. Go back to that matrix that we talk about of what data should be where and how to use it. That helps as a really strong governance approach to moving that forward. And again, that accountability around the use of it is really important. So those are the sort of key issues that we want to cover. So as we've just teased, next week's webinar will be about how to share data and keep data safe in the platform. Alex and the team will take us through some of the functionality that's already built into that. We've popped the link into the chat, so please do that. Make sure you subscribe to the NEP website so we can send you the updates as well as we move things forward to keep things going. And on the latest updates, we now have 12 forces who've achieved the final milestone, which is a fantastic result. And it means that we've got probably 80 to 100,000 users across policing in the UK on the Microsoft 365 suite with various levels. We wouldn't hear about how you're using it, and we could be inviting you to take part in some of these webinars to share your knowledge with other forces. There is a benefits part of the Enabling Centre which talks about how you report them back to us, so we can feature them and give the forces the credit for the work they're doing at the moment. Thanks everybody for joining us. Please get in touch. Remember, you have got your engagement team and delivery managers in each force who are there to support you. So if you do have any questions, reach out to your local delivery teams and we'll be there to help you. Thanks very much, everyone.